Welcome to episode 303, the Car Photo Challenge. Coming up, how come more people have sent me pictures of Corvettes rather than any other make of car? How did April manage to trigger a whole flood of childhood memories for me? And how on earth did Gord manage to send me a photo of a black and white, grainy, out of focus car that still looks really cool? All that and more. Stick around, leave a comment and we can make a start. Yes, and welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 303. Today, the Car Photo Challenge. If you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment. Let me know where you're from. Let me know what the weather's doing. Right outside just now, it's wet and miserable. The rain keeps coming on quite heavy and then sort of hovering off for a little bit. But yeah, a bit kind of dreich, really. Here in southwest Scotland. So yeah, but also, click the like. Let me, that always helps the algorithms. Sometimes if enough people are watching when we start, click the like, then, that it kind of, it triggers things. Maybe the algorithms decide to show it to a few other people and we occasionally pick up a few extras while we're at it. Even if you're not watching live, if you're watching the recorded version, then you should find below anything from about a few hours after this, quite a detailed broken down menu of timestamps, so you can leap forward to whichever bit interests you the most. But as I say, right now, if you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment. I can see we've got a few comments in already. Lisa says, good morning from a partly cloudy southern Maryland. April joins us from a sunny Long Island, New York. Gunilla says, hi from Roland. It has been lovely weather today. Yesterday it rained all day for the first time in a long time. Roland joins us from an overcast London. Stacy says, good morning, all cloudy and overcast, a little cooler but humid. That's in Pennsylvania. Gord says, hello everyone. Andy joins us from Hertfordshire in England, and Janet says hi from an overcast, warm but not hot Mississauga in Canada. Right, so we now have a kind of a global weather system, or at least Europe and North America at any rate. Need to see whether Viji will get a chance to join us from Chennai in India and let us know what's going on over there. Hot is usually the answer to that one. Yes, so what are we talking about? So today is the Car Photo Challenge. So Robert in Texas, back in, we're in August, back in July, he accumulated the most Smug Points for the month. And as such, got to choose the topic. So he decided to choose the topic cars. I'm hoping he'll get a chance to join us a bit later. And so we've had 14 people send in images. And like I say, Corvettes seem to be the thing of the topic for this one. Out of 14, 3 people have sent in Corvettes. Also, I mean, obviously, because of kind of part of the demographics, there's probably more American style cars than there are any other country or make of origin. Unsurprisingly, but probably quite pleasing for Andy, and we'll get on to that one in a minute. Marci joins us as well. Says good morning, everyone. Of course, it's morning over in the States, isn't it? I always forget, because of course it's mid-afternoon here in UK. Early evening in Chennai. Right, so where should we start then? Well, I tell you, okay, first thing I need to do is just the usual bit of just tidying up my desktop a little bit here so that I can see everything and make sure I've got all the usual bits and pieces. This is back to one of those things where you know full well you are watching live. It is not it is not beautifully, smoothly recorded and edited. It's also definitely not AI, because no amount of AI would make this amount of hesitations and this amount of mistakes, generally speaking. Oh, Robert has joined us. Says, howdy all from Texas. And it's the end of the world. Can't wait until fall. Okay, so it's still hot in Texas then, I gather. Oh, John's joined us from a beautiful day in mid-Ohio. Excellent. Right, okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to start with Andy. And Andy sent in this one. And I thought, well, okay, let's just start here and boom, wow. It's just colour. And on top of that, it's, there's the way Andy has shot this, the way he has edited it. it's just got that kind of whole, I mean, although he's not gone for a cinematic crop, it's kind of got cinema written all over it. The colour grading, it's just, it feels like, you know, fantastic American bump, although it was not taken in America. Because, let me read you what Andy says here. So Andy says, this one's Summer Days, Nostalgia and Freedom. This is a picture of Glenn with his 58 Cadillac convertible coupe. I photographed him as part of an ongoing project, The American Dream. And I've seen a couple of other ones in Andy's collection of The American Dream, and it's wonderful. Bearing in mind that Andy is based in England, not in America. What The American Dream does is explores why we haven't, here in Britain, we have an obsession with American cars. Glenn has 4 of these beasts, and he's lovingly restored and hires out for films and special occasions. Photographing Glenn and his caddy was a daunting task. These cars are so imposing that they can dominate the frame. It was really hard. It was hard visually balancing a view that represented the spirit of the car and the subject. In the end, I didn't go for a stunning front or rear detail, as it was too dominating, but focused on including the stunning paintwork and suggestions of chrome and shape to evoke the spirit. The shoot was outdoors and against the bright sun, and so Glenn is lit by a flash and a softbox. So, you know, it's not just a case of, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things going on here with Andy, and a lot of great thought that's gone into creating something like this. I mean, first of all, we can look at the notion of the split screen, the blue on the top, the orange underneath, that kind of warm glow of a sort of slight nostalgic kind of colour that he's used in the colour grading. The sun is coming down, we can see the way it's hitting Glenn's head and back, but Andy's offset this so that he's not lost in deep shadow with softboxes. It looks like he's cruising the American highway, although actually if we do look at the reflection, we can see that there's another parked car here with what's probably a thistle, a bit of grass in here. But what's also quite fun though is it looks like another American car is in the reflection of it as well, which is also kind of adding to those hints of chrome. So there's story, there's colour, there's shape, there's thought that's gone into composition, thought that's gone into the lighting and the whole mood and feel of it. And I must just say, wow, you know, it's you know, incredibly impressive. So I thought I would sort of start us where, you know, with this photo, you kind of feel like you ought to be pulling out your shades to stick on, either in sort of sympathy with it or, you know, just for the sheer bright colours of it. Yeah, so thank you, Andy, for sending that one along. I thought it was a nice kind of way to start it, but also that notion of because of the, you know, you've got this series that you're underway with called The American Dream, of people with American cars. Given the fact that actually the majority of the car photos that you're going to see today are in fact American cars, not all of them taken in America, has to be said, that it's you know, it just sort of seems to tie in quite nicely. So comments then. Roland says great colours. Robert says Andy, incredible. April says good shot. Andy saying thank you. Marilyn joins us, says great image Andy. Stacy says very nice. John says nice composition and colours. Andy says thanks all. Lisa says very nice job. So yes, great way to kind of hit us between the eyes with this. Now, next up, I'm going to, where have I gone here? Yeah, there we go. I'm going to go to April. Sandy joins us, says love this Andy, so nostalgic, takes one back in time. Marci says I love cars, so will hold my opinions until the end. Well, yes, at the end, of course, what we will be doing is we will have the Smug Points. Everybody gets 10 Smug Points who's put one in for this challenge. If you're watching live and you leave a comment live, you get a bonus 5 Smug Points. This is all going to really add up here because this is the end of the month, so we're going to find out who wins the Smug Point challenge, Smug Point accumulation of August. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but there will be bonus Smug Points to come at the end as well. So next up then, yes, where am I going to? Here. Now, April sent in this one, and this is a Ford Galaxie 500. Now, although she doesn't mention it's a Ford Galaxie, I knew it was. Why would I know that? I'll come on to that. Anyway, April says, here is my photo for the car challenge. This car was in a perfect spot with no people around it or any other car. That's really hard to find. I will just say Viji knows your point because of the photo she sent and the problem she had trying to photograph it with a bunch of other cars around. So we'll come on to that a bit later as well. Overlap with all these things. She goes on to say, yeah, I like how the engine hood is up as well. This was taken in a restaurant parking lot before the dinner traffic came in. So this is a fun car. Yeah, again, it's got that beautiful lines and shape. And although she doesn't mention it's a Ford Galaxie, I looked at this and I thought, there's something familiar about this car. It's really kind of shaped. And I dropped it into Google Lens, which, you know, it helps you identify bits and pieces. And apparently it is a 1966 Ford Galaxie 500 convertible. And the reason I thought this looked familiar was because of this. Now this, also to tie into Andy's thing, this is a photo from my childhood. So this is my dad here with my sister, and he's got a Ford Galaxie 500. Now it's slightly different to April's. This one, although black and white, you can't see, it was a kind of slightly paler metallic green. But you can see the shape is very, very similar. Now, there are subtle differences in the shape. In the line, that this has a sort of strong line that goes and it's straight all the way along, whereas this one has a little bit coming down here. We've got a line that curves down a bit at the back. There's subtle differences in the front grille, but it is still very much the same car. And basically, whereas April's one was a 1966 Ford Galaxie 500, this one of my father's was a 1955 Ford Galaxie 500. And he only had it for a couple of years, back when I was about 5-6 years old. And looking at this photo here, what we've got is we've got my father, my little sister, my grandmother, and then my mother sitting over there. And it's one of these things of childhood memories for me, because my dad decided he managed to get hold of this great, big, huge American car, which by British standards, I mean, you could, you know, when you've got things like the little Mini Cooper, you could practically fit in the boot or the trunk of a car like this. And it's only 2 doors long and it's 18 foot long. It's a 7-litre engine, which my dad said on a really good run, if you were really lucky, you'd get up to about 11 miles per gallon, but quite often closer to about 4 to 7. So absolute petrol guzzler. And he had it for a couple of years. He used it a little bit, but actually most of those 2 years were spent in the garage because something went wrong with it. And at that time, back in early 1970s Britain, there were very, very few American car specialists outside of London. And we were living in Wales at the time. And if something went wrong, you couldn't get the parts. And they had to send off to America to get it. And then it would take months and something might come back and then they'd add it on and maybe it would work and maybe it wouldn't. And it was a real shame. He never really got to use it the amount. And after a couple of years of it, he got rid of it. Most of the time we were driving around in a Morris Minor at the time. But having said that, this then is, you know, so I had to go and dug out this old photo and I thought a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of fun. So April, for that you're going to get a bonus 10 smug points. I'm just going to, I don't, you know, this is my show. Hey, I can throw the smug points about however I like, but just for the sheer accidental nostalgic memories, I'm going to give you a bonus 10 smug points for finding a Ford Galaxie. That was so much fun. So many, many thanks for sending that one in, April. What else have we got? Yeah, so where are we? Sandy said, belated greetings all from Alberta. Rain forecast, but they've been wrong before. And he says, great shot, great car, great brand, I would guess. April says, thank you, Kim. I forgot to look for the kind of car. Marci says, is anyone else's live streaming freezing? Hoping not anybody else is. At this end, it still says my link seems to be fairly good. Try refreshing if you're having too much of a problem, Marci. Stacy says this is especially tough at a car show, which is about not getting anything else about. Andy says, I find getting low down or close in helps. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. If you're tucked in amongst other people, then yeah, that low down kind of close stuff. Well, we talked a little bit about that back in episode 301 as well. Sandy says Marci scored on this one. Actually, this one isn't Marci's. This one is April's. But anyway, she said she's great shot. Stacey says good shot, and April saying thanks. Roland's 4 to 7. That's like 4 to 7 miles at a gallon. OMG. Yes. April's thanking me for the bonus 10 smug points. Marci says, I'm getting choppy, pixelated live stream. All I see is fuzz right now. Sorry to hear. I'm afraid I have no answers for you at this end. Stacy says, Kim, you really know a lot about this. You know about this car. A lot of cars had large engines and didn't give you plenty of mileage. This is just purely memories from childhood and complaints from my mum and dad about how little you couldn't get that far before you had to fill up again. There were great big gas guzzlers built in the 70s before petrol prices went through the roof. Okay, you certainly couldn't drive one of these days. I mean, my goodness, even if you only got 7 miles a litre, you'd be feeling like you weren't getting very. I mean, I get about 12 miles a litre out of my Mini, so and it's 4.5 litres to the gallon, at least in the UK. Slightly different measurements of gallons in the US, I think. Anyway, where are we going? I'm stressed. So right, next up then, we have John. Now, John found this Model A, old Ford Model A, and he says, this was taken on a road trip out west in Idaho, just a little west of Yellowstone National Park. It was in an old abandoned town, and this Ford Model A was just parked there. I saw it and had to stop for a few pics, and of course you had to stop for it. You know, yeah, you see something like that, you're bound to leap out of the car and take some photos. Now, there's an odd thing about this car. The first time I saw it is you go, oh, it's tilted horizon, tilted car. And in fact, actually, I did, when John sent it to me, I did send him back a little message saying, well, look, you know, if you just, the first thing I'm noticing is tilt. If you want to kind of straighten it up a little bit, that's and resend it, that's okay. Anyway, he said, no, it's fine, don't really have time. But what I did was, I thought I'd actually have a go at just straightening it, and I found it didn't work. So this is, so I'm just going to show you here briefly that actually, because whilst everything is definitely looking like it's tilted, if I turn this and then straighten it so that we can see the windscreen is now straight, I'll do content aware fill just for the sake of it. Now the background's gone, the fence has gone, and that doesn't quite look straight either. And of course the roof is a bit tilted as well, and the wheels are, the whole car is slightly, nothing's quite straight, so that doesn't really work. And yeah, Roland just says, I like the wonky angle. And to be honest, yeah, if I go back to here, yeah, it works. The wonky angle works better. I'll tell you what is getting, I think really what probably gets me slightly more is it just feels a bit too close to the edge. You've gone for a square crop, but if you've gone for a square crop, you really do need it in the middle. So if you're having it in the middle, you want about the same kind of space on either side. So and it feels a bit too close to the left. It's not small enough to have on a to go for rule of thirds. So you really do just want to kind of, so if I keep it square, you want to kind of nudge it out a little bit. You also want to make sure that, again, just as there's a similar amount of gap from side to side, you want to make sure there's a similar amount of gap from top to bottom. So you're talking about something like that. Okay. I mean, I'm just doing content aware fill, but basically that just sits slightly more comfortable. Always be aware that, you know, when you've taken the photo, you're trying to get, you know, you give it the space to breathe, or, you know, understand that where the edges are cropped in. You know, sometimes we're going rule of thirds, sometimes we're, you know, but if you're going for a square photo, generally something like this, It's just a tiny little bit. Yeah, April says on a hill. Yeah, and that's bound to be what happened. It's sort of on a slight slope. But yeah, actually, back to Roland's point, the wonky, well, yeah, kind of works for it. It's an old car that looks like it's kind of falling apart. I mean, obviously still cared for, not been abandoned since, in the centuries, because otherwise those tyres would have rotted away. But what a beautiful car. So yeah, thanks John for sending that one in, and my apologies for suggesting you should straighten it, though I do think maybe a little bit of space helps. Right, what have we got? Marci says, I love the odd angles, it's what makes the photo for me. And John says, always great tips, thanks Kim, excellent. Right, next up then we have Stacy. Now here's a car I don't think I've ever come across before, and I can imagine Andy getting super excited about seeing one of these as well, which is this Duesenberg. Says, as Duesenberg I took back in 2019 on the streets of Philadelphia. I had to take the photo front and side and split the photograph. The cars were manufactured in the 1930s as a sports car, and most criminals of the day drove them because of their speed. I thought it was a Rolls when I first looked, but it's an easy mistake to make because of the sleek look. The manufacturer stopped production before the 1940s. There are clubs that honour these cars. I took it for how fascinating it looked and the colour. So yeah, actually what we've got here is a diptych. We've got two photos in one. Just a point, which if you are doing a diptych, by the way, one of the things you've got, although it's the same car from slightly different angles, it's a different, there's a different colour processing on it. What we can see here is that the colours on the left are a bit more saturated than the colours on the right. So, you look at it looks much kind of a more yellowy gold here, where it's more of a kind of brown, bronzy gold on the right here. The reds are richer on here, this side, and softer on that side. Even the blues, I mean, basically, I think this one's been much more saturated. Or the vibrant slider has been moved up because those blues look a bit kind of overkill as well. But having said that, I mean, quite an amazing car. Yeah, and it is one of those which you would really want to get out into a field or get out into a street and actually just really try and play around and get some great shots from. I mean, just that it's got one of those kind of bonnets or hoods that go on forever. Andy says, love this, and Roland says, should be on a film set. Yeah, April says, nice shot, I like the street look. So, yes, nice one there, Stacy. Thanks for sending that one in. Next up, we've got the first of our Corvettes, which is this one from Gunilla. Now, Gunilla said, I hadn't taken many new car photos until today. This was a couple of days ago when she sent it in. But suddenly I spotted a special car in the shopping mall parking lot. I had my mobile phone with me and initially took photos of it from the rear, but realised the background wasn't very nice. Instead, I moved to the front, knelt down, and took a photo with the shopping mall in the background. I think it's a Chevrolet Corvette. I've altered the number plate so it can't be traced. So yeah, so yes, a Chevy, a Corvette. In fact, we have another Corvette in a bit as well. And yeah, and this is to use that notion. You're going for kneeling down, taking from that, at a lower angle near the kind of right front headlight, manages to give you that kind of angle. Yeah, John says I like the lower angle, and I think it works. It's back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, which is a standard kind of, as I'm standing here, normal head height looking down is rarely the best angle for photographing cars. But certainly sports cars and a lot of cars, when you get kind of down to sort of crouch level, I always feel it's a little bit like photographing children or photographing animals. You need to kind of get down to their level. Photographing down on your pet dog is never going to be as intimate, if you like, as getting down to the same level as the dog and photographing on their eye level. And that notion of sort of photographing on an eye level for an animal or a human, we find actually seems to translate into the car. Now, obviously, headlights are not eyes, but pareidolia, remember that one from a few months ago? We kind of, the headlights kind of become eyes. And so when you get down to that level, it just sort of feels a bit more, you're there with it, rather than just standing back observing. Marci says, I'm going to have a hard time picking a fave today. Yeah. Oh, Meg's joined us and says, hello, everyone. Sandy says, hard to pass that one up. John, love it. It looks in fairly good shape. That's about the Ford A. Model A. Now, where are we? Okay, so, yes, thank you for sending that one in, Gunilla. Next up is Janet, and Janet said, shake, rabble and roll. And I like this. This is a bit of fun as well. That Janet's got a photo, fancy car there. Actually doesn't say what kind of car this one was. Is it another Corvette? I don't know what car there. I don't know that Google Lens would actually manage to figure that one out. Maybe I should try it. Okay, maybe another time. But gone for the reflection in the hubcap of a different car. And I think that's kind of fun, you know. So it's got the warped distortion side of it. At the same time, got this, you know, little bit of reflection here as well. There's a fun aspect to this. I like that idea. Oh, Roland says a Ford Thunderbird. I'm impressed, Roland. Here's a guy who knows his cars. Who needs Google Lens? We just call Roland. Sandy says very cool, Janet. Yeah, I think it's a bit of fun. I like that idea of just going in and looking for unconventional angles as well. I mean, basically, if we are photographing cars, we're trying to get the sense of the car, but that's not all what it's about. You know, it's back to this notion of we don't photograph things to see what they look like. We photograph things to see what they look like as a photo. And it's as a photo, the camera gives us options to see things in ways that we don't normally see it. And when you hunt out and find a little bit of reflection, like in that hubcap, and just kind of chop it in, then, isolate it, then that's not the way we would normally see things or notice things. So, yeah, a little bit of fun with that. So, yeah, thanks for sending that one in, Janet. What have we got? Oh, Marci says, I was about to say, Marci was about to say it was the Ford Thunderbirds, so she concurs. Roland says he's guessing. Marci says it is. Well, okay. No messing with Marci. Janet says, I have no idea what kind of car I was shooting, or either of them. Well, looks like Ford Thunderbird is what it was. Right. Okay. Where are we? So, yes, we're going roughly about halfway through-ish, but there's still a few bits to come. Don't go rushing away. So, a little bit of a reminder then that if you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining even, and wish to support them, then one of the ways you can do it is the buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres. One of the ways you can support these podcasts. Coffee, more coffees. Can never have too many coffees. Now, if you are wanting to send photos in for future challenges or for feedback, because next week, for example, is a feedback session, we'll talk about that again towards the end of the podcast, then send your image to kimairespodcast@gmail.com. That's the address I've set up for these podcasts. If you don't, you send it to my ordinary email address, it's not the end of the world. But I started to become very aware that after 6 years of doing these podcasts, my inbox was filling up too much. So I've set up a separate one, kimairespodcast@gmail, and it makes it a lot easier for me to kind of gather them all together if you can. There's that. Now, the other thing is Smug Points. Smug Points. So where are we at with the Smug Points? Because it all gets exciting now, because we are at the end of the month. And at the end of this, given that who sent in an image is getting 10 Smug Points. Everybody who's leaving a comment live is getting 5 Smug Points. April's already got a 10 bonus Smug Points for her evoking childhood memories for me. We've still to come my choices, where I'm going to pick out my favourite second and third, which bonus 30, 20, 10 for that. And there's a viewer's crowd choice. Okay, so, keep looking. You don't have to say what it is yet, because obviously we've got to get to the end. Once I've gone through them all, I will run back through them. You'll get to choose yours. Where's bonus 20 Smug Points for that. All this can contribute to who wins the August Smug Point accumulation, and therefore gets to choose the topic for September. But how are we at this point? Because this has been a 5-week month. And basically, out there in front at the moment, is Gunilla on 85 Smug Points. And the fact that she's sent an image in and is here commenting means she's automatically at 100 regardless of whatever else is put in. So she's the front runner. Most of this comes down to the fact that when we've had feedback sessions, Gunilla's been really good at sending an image in for feedback. Because remember, you get a bonus 25 Smug Points if you've put in an image for feedback that I use. Then second up is Anton. Anton's on 65 Smug Points, but Roland is on 60. And then Robert and Sandy are on 35. So there's still a lot to play for here. So that's where we are with the Smug Points. Oh, Lisa says coffee is what I need right now. Well, I guess is it time for morning coffee where you are? Got to be in Maryland, yeah. Got to be coffee time in the morning there. So, right. So yes, we are going to move on now. Yes, this one I found. This one's from Gord. Okay, so Gord really surprised me with this one because you can take a photo. Black and white, nothing wrong with black and white. Grainy, yep, you can get away with grainy. Out of focus, whoa, not sure about that. Generally speaking, black and white, grainy, out of focus car, you're going to say, well, that's not going to work, is it? Until you see this. Hey, Chevy Corvette. What a cool photo. What an amazingly cool photo. It really caught me, this one. I mean, there's a lot gone in. The editing in this is superb as well. You know, to be able to, you know, he's gone for the black and white and he's allowed the grain there. And so we've got a moving car. So Gord sent me this one and he said he took this one actually on his lunch break. He was out for a walk and then he remembered that there was actually a car photo challenge. He said the Corvette was accelerating and I was attempting to track it with a slow shutter speed. Now 1/16 of a second, according to the EXIF information. And he said he noticed it about 10 seconds before snapping the shot. So, and that's, you know, one of those things. I mean, how many times have we seen a lovely car go past and by the time we've either had our camera ready or got the settings we wanted, it's gone. But for whatever reason, Gord had 10 seconds, whether he had his camera there or was already thinking about it, I don't know. But he had the sensibility to be able to go, okay, I'm going for a tracking shot. He's obviously done tracking shots before because you don't get something like this on your first attempt. And so as the car's going past, he's going click. Okay, 1/16 of a second is just enough to get to register the movement. And he's moving, and most of the car's mostly is more in focus than the background. The background's got a movement to it. It's not completely, you know, we can see the little overlap, the amount of time between, you know, that he's been out. But my goodness, what a power this has, and beautifully, beautifully edited to fit. And that's really the only thing with this is I really do feel it needs a little bit more space in the front. Now, maybe that's, you know, again, a matter of taste, but by and large, there is a thing where, but I mean, I did play around a little bit. Actually, let me just swap the workspace around here. I did play around a little bit with this just to see. Now, the first thing you might do is trim off a little bit at the back and then maybe add a little bit to the front. Again, I'll just use content aware fill. But having said that, no, we lost, you know, actually I like that little bright patch at the back is really important. Okay, that little diagonal, that's an important part of it. But it just does need a little bit more at the front. And so I would say you want ideally even, or actually just a fraction more. And if you get that fraction more, there is definitely something about when you've got movement, you tend to look in front of the thing that's moving. So whether somebody's walking, whether somebody's on a bicycle, whether a car is driving, whether a plane is flying, you want to have a sense of it moving into the space. And by and large, that's because we kind of ignore what's behind it. So if you've got a lot of space behind the picture, which is kind of empty, then most of the photo's wasted. It's empty real estate. It's a loss. Whereas if we can just create that little bit more there, something. In fact, I might even just nudge that a fraction more, something like that. And I mean, that does it for me. That does it for me big time. Just that extra little bit of space in the front. And, you know, for me, it's the perfect shot. It's gorgeous. It's just lovely. And the shapes, the colour, well, the black and white, I mean, the tones, the editing, and that sense of movement just needs that little bit of space in front. But stunning photo there, Gord. And yeah, so excellent. Many thanks for sending that one in. Really enjoyed seeing that one. And then thinking about that whole notion of the fact that, you know, like I said, we would always normally say, if it's out of focus, it's not going to work. However, having said that, we've got podcasts in the past, at least one, possibly more, of where we've talked about intentional camera movement, which is all about deliberately blurring the camera. And that notion of panning is one of those things where it can sometimes work in your favour. Right, okay, what else have we got? Marci says, I sent in but 2 weeks ago, so lost in your inbox, but that's okay. No, Marci, yours, you did send me one. It will be included. It just hasn't turned up yet. Where are we? Yeah, Andy says, nice shot. Roland says, wow. Lisa says, love the motion capture. Robert says, stunning shot of the C8. Very nice. There you go. Robert even knows what version it is. Sandy says, gorgeous. Marilyn says, well done. Meg says, absolutely outstanding photo. Marci says, very nice. Gord says, thanks. Stacy says, intentional movement, good, love it. Marci says, the light through the wheels is the perfect accent. And anyway, Gord's agreeing. He says, yep, more up front. And John says, a great motion shot. Gord says he will go back and look at the raw. Okay, excellent. So that's a fun one. So yeah, many thanks for sending that one in, Gord. Now, by complete comparison, about as far different as you can get in terms of your 0 to 60. Anton sent in this one. Yay! Guess who's going to get left behind at the starting line in a drag race between Gord's Corvette and Anton's little tractor? Anton said, I dug out an old photo I took nearly 2 years ago when I was visiting my little brother, my little brother's close friend in our hometown village. I'm not a car guy. I know nothing about them, but even I know that this is a tractor. That's a relief. I hope that's close enough. Now, yeah, car, tractor, but it is beautifully taken. It is beautifully. It is the colours, the shape, the background. It's a beautiful photo. It really is. Anyway, he says it's one of the few photos of mine that has really made a lasting impression, and is easily and often vividly recalled in my brain. Taken with my trusty old filament 50mm prime, the nifty 50, the little f1.8. You know, one of the cheapest lenses you can get for a Canon, fully open at f1.8. So he's got a prime lens, he's taking a shot, no zooming in or out. But at f1.8, what's rather lovely from the distance he's at is the background has become out of focus. And it's rather beautifully, so it sits, and even the foreground here, you know, these fallen leaves are just out of focus. We can see, so it's a very narrow depth of field. By the time we get to the other side of the tractor, it's gone out of focus again. So it's in nice sharp focus just on this kind of front bit here, the front headlight, and then it starts drifting out. And even the little kind of cutter at the back here has started to go out of focus. But we've got the farmhouse in the background. We've got the ground. We've got the leaves. We've got that beautiful evening light hitting. It's so rural. It is so, and it is beautifully framed, and it's got such a character to it. And in a way, actually, that kind of blurred foreground and background is almost like the tilt shift effect that we played around with. Was that 6 months ago, last year? Can't remember exactly when we were doing the tilt shift, but it almost gives it the kind of a toy car feel or a toy tractor. But it does, it's evocative almost of playing with a farmyard set when you're a kid. But the colour, that red against those kind of autumn colours, is stunning. Really is a stunning photo, Anton. So, although not strictly speaking a car, hey, I'm including it. I'm not going to moan about off topic because it's such a lovely photo. So yeah, lovely one to see that, Anton. So many thanks for sending that one in. Comments, Andy says, love this one, Anton. Roland says, oh, that's got a lot of character. Lisa says, I would drive this. It's so lovely. Yeah, you just wouldn't expect to burn anybody off at the traffic lights. Marilyn says, great image. Robert says, tractor? I will allow it. Oh, how gracious of you, Robert. And Sandy says, those colours are beautiful in this shot. Great fall farm shot. Excellent. Right. Okay. Let's move on then to, Marci says, they are the hardest working cars in the world. That's if you call them a car. Right. So next on then, we're on to Roland. Now, Roland has sent in this Land Rover Defender. And he says, please find attach my entry for the competition. Took this for a friend who is selling his car. I like the vertical crop. As for the vehicle, I think it sort of sets the car in its native environment. And yeah, winter trees in the background, you know, yeah, it's a good environment, you know, and that height of trees. I think you're in the ballpark here, right? But what I kind of have to, my hesitation on this one, Roland, is the unnatural blur at the back. Especially if we compare to Roland's the background blur here has come from the camera itself, whereas what's happened with you is you've added the blur afterwards. Now imagine you've probably done that because the particular sharpness of the whatever depth of field you were using meant that perhaps the trees were just a bit too sharp and you felt that they were detracting from the Defender. But the problem is as we get, you know, when you move in, if you look around the edges here, it's got the blurry edges. It's got the telltale blurry edges, and especially like where there's a post here, and it's actually slightly sharper behind the post than the post itself is out. And so I don't know so it's got all the classic signs of select and then selectively blur afterwards in the editing. And the key thing about editing is not to see the edit unless the edit is the point of it. So in things like selective color, the fact that that's an editing effect is the point of it. And there are certain editing effects where, you know, it's kind of a bit like Gord's one, where, you know, it's black and white, it's grainy, it's out of focus, but the editing is there all to heighten the power of the image. And if the editing distracts from the image, if you're looking at a photo thinking about the editing, you're not looking at the photo thinking about the content. Okay, and that's the biggest thing to remember with your editing. Your editing should never distract from the picture. Now, again, depending on where you're putting it, depending on who's going to see it and how they're going to see it. So if, for example, I was looking at this on my phone, in Photo Crowd, on Guru Shots, in Viewbug, one of these online competitions where you're just kind of scrolling, and at that size, you're not going to notice it. You're not going to see those details, and you can get away with it. And at that size, at a small size, that blur works. It helps the car stand out against the background, stops it being too busy. But because I'm looking at this on my computer screen, also you said that you'd taken this photo for a friend, so your friend presumably is going to be using it. Then at that point, as we go in, you then start to notice. Again, if your friend's not a photographer, might not even notice. There are so many things on people's phones that you know, you can select portrait mode on your phone and it automatically blurs out the background. But what it's doing is also selecting the subject. And it's always at those edges where a lot of, you know, the algorithms and what have you built into it don't quite get it right. So it does look different. And whereas when I go back to this one and where we can see the natural blur, when we get to the edges, we don't feel that, you know, it feels natural where it is. It doesn't feel like it's been added in afterwards. So that's primarily where that is. But I like the idea, Roland. I think you know, having the trees tall behind it, the Land Rover only occupying the lower half, even the lower third of the photo, I think is a good idea. It's just the editing detail. But yeah, thanks for sending that one in. We have, Roland says, I agree, should have left it untouched. April says, everyone has good shots. Andy says, great shots today. Sorry, need to drop. Have a great day, folks. Okay, yeah, thanks for turning up, Andy. But do tune back in, Andy, because there are more cars in here that you're going to love, I know. So when you get the chance, come back and watch it on catch up. Right, okay, next one then is Viji. And Viji sent in this one of a Buick. And she says, I visited the Antique Car Museum in Chennai and took around 300 photos. There were cars from as far back as 1911. Quite interesting in various shapes and sizes, yet the huge challenge was that they were standing next to each other and it required a good amount of editing to remove the other cars. And so, yeah, here we've got the Buick, first of all, what beautiful colours, what beautiful shape. Love that front angle from the grille. Again, getting down low so that you're getting the kind of big front end of it. And it's got such personality and shape to it. However, what you run into here is exactly the same problem. It's one of the reasons I placed this next to Roland's in this, because it's suffering from the same problem. Now, Viji sent me the original, which is this. And here what we can see is we've got this incredible car, and it's, inches away. It doesn't even look like you could squeeze down the side between those two cars on the right, at least. What is it? It's a Buick, 1946 Buick. And yeah, an amazing car, beautiful car, and convertible as well. And so what you've done is you've isolated it, but in that same kind of way that if we get in here, there's little bits which haven't quite worked. A bit of the masking has taken out the light there. There's a bit of a rough line there. It's not, doesn't kind of feel like it's extraordinarily difficult to get good masking. And this is either done very quickly or it's done with the kind of auto select. And there's a lot of things to go back to that notion of when we're talking about editing, is that the auto tools available in Photoshop, or like I say, even on your phone, are pretty damn amazing. They can seem to find the subject and select, except they don't always do it perfectly. Now, again, if it's just quickly shoving up something which anybody's only ever going to look at on their phone, maybe it doesn't matter. But if you are a photographer, if you are trying to get the idea of an image that would look good if you wanted to print it up, then these details start to matter. Another thing with this is that what doesn't quite make sense is you've gone for this black or very dark blue background here, but the windows are grey, and that's because it's a convertible. When we're looking here, we can see through this thing, we're looking at the same grey wall behind. So that kind of makes sense. But when we look back at this one, it's grey here and then it's this dark blue background. So that's not quite tying in properly with it either. So what we're up against here then is the notion of you're in the museum, there's these fantastic cars, you come across the Buick, you think, right, okay, how do I photograph it without all these other cars getting in the way? And as Andy suggested earlier, getting low is a good way, and you've done that. You've got low. The other cars are still in shot. But the question then is, does it matter that the other cars are in shot? Okay, here's a really important thing. How often have we talked about in these podcasts that when you are presented with a set of limitations, you can either be trying to do things which mitigate those limitations or lean into those limitations. So actually, instead of seeing them as a limitation, start going, well, okay, how can I turn them into a benefit, a positive? So if you're in a car museum, What would be interesting about being in a car museum? Rather than trying to isolate a car, start thinking about the fact that the car is in a museum setting. Maybe if you turned lengthways, sort of along the side, and you got a whole bunch of cars all lined up, all these front grills, that could be interesting, especially then if you use, say, a very narrow depth of field. So a bit like Anton's, you've got your f1.8 or an f2.8 or something like that, and then you lock onto one which is 2 or 3 cars down in front of you. So the cars in the foreground are out of focus. The cars in the background are getting steadily more out of focus, but you lock onto the front grille of a particularly interesting car you like. There's the idea of taking the photos of the cars in a context. So actually, can you get some interesting shots of the kind of people who are milling around? Are there people in interesting outfits, or just interesting expressions or movement or gestures or body language? So the idea is that if you're off at a car museum, rather than trying to think, how can I isolate this car? Because you're never really going to be able to do it very well. Lean into the idea of well, I'm in a museum setting. How do I make the most of that? Similarly, then, if you're at a vintage car show and you're out and about, go for the shot. Go get some wide angle shots. Get shots of several cars lined up and the people milling around them. The other thing to do is to go in for the details, to get in really close and find a little bit of the grille or the headlight or the badge, things like that. You can play around with that. But I do like that notion. It's the key. I think it's just one of these key things to kind of keep remembering that whenever you find yourself at a point of limitation and you can't mitigate that limitation through your camera settings or your lens or your environment, then what you need to do is look for ways to lean into those limitations and see them as there's a word, it's like benefit. Lean into it, basically see the limitations as an asset. How can I work with them rather than feeling like I'm butting up against them? And the more you do that, the more you get into a habit of doing that, quite often the more exciting your photography can become. Certainly the less frustrating your photography can be. I mean, my go-to point on this, I think I've mentioned before in the past, I don't have the photos to do it, but I had, 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Morocco, and we went out into the Sahara Desert. Because of the kind of trip it was, because of the limitations I had the option to take one lens with me. And so I decided to take a wide angle lens on the flight out to Morocco with me. And I had these images of being up on these high dunes and seeing, this massive landscape out in front of me and being able to get all these beautiful layered sand dunes with my wide angle lens. And on the morning of we camel rode out into the desert. We camped overnight up early in the morning to watch the sunrise over the dunes. And as I climbed up the dunes and I got out I realised I'd got the wrong lens. The wide angle lens actually just flattened all these huge dunes. It was completely and utterly the wrong choice. And that's me coming from a point 10 years ago. And I'm not a landscape photographer. I'm a portrait photographer. I didn't know it was going to do that. I know it now. I didn't know it back at the time. And there's a few moments of absolute panic as I realised, well, it's too late now. I can't travel 3,000 miles back to Scotland and swap my camera lens and still be back in here in time for sunrise. So what I did was I went back down the dune. I went down into the dunes, between the dunes, and I managed to find some camels where I could get the angle of the sun rising and they were silhouetted against it. I actually ended up with some really interesting photos. But what I did was I had to change my expectations of what I was going to do. Standing there thinking the environment is wrong, the lens is wrong, the camera is wrong, everything about this is wrong. What can I do? And I couldn't mitigate it. So at that point, I made the decision to lean into it. Well, okay, given the camera I've got, the lens I've got, the environment that I'm in, how do I make the best out of what I've got here? And that idea is absolute key to you developing yourself as a photographer. Is not to go, oh, I didn't have it right, I'll give up. But to go, how can I turn this to my advantage? Okay, so limitations can be turned to an advantage rather than having to be mitigated. Right. that's the big lesson for today, if nothing else. What have we got? Sandy says, beautiful image of car. April likes the colour. Marilyn says, classic car and great viewpoint, Viji. Marci says, not sure why the museum wouldn't properly badge it. It's a Buick Roadmaster. It's what put Buick on the map. And Marci says, I inherited my love of cars from my grandpa. Yeah. Lovely, yeah. Right, okay. So next up then, we're going to go to Robert. Now, Robert sent in this one, said, 27-year-old co-worker has a Jaguar and he wanted some photos of it. So we took it to a parking garage. I'm currently renting a Leica Q343 and needed a subject to shoot. And what Robert's also done is he's sent in the raw file as well. And so what he's done is found this garage, he's using the shape, that kind of narrow shape, to kind of put it in. So it's kind of an interesting one. I think he's gone black and white, a little bit grainy. Well, maybe not so much actually. I think you've, yeah, a touch grain in there, but not in the same way that Roland did. It's a tricky one, this. Now, what I've noticed is you've got the lights are on, but because there's no mist, fog, smoke or anything like that, you're not getting the beam of light. And actually, if I tried photoshopping in a beam of light, it would just look a little bit odd. The other thing I noticed about this here is you've got these arrows. And these arrows, I just think, what if they were slightly closer to the car? I think that would be kind of fun. So just to show you what I mean, let's tell you what, let's just, what if I click auto? I'll tell you what, let's go for the light here. I'll come back because I'm going to play around with this a little bit. So I'm going to bring the shadows up and the highlights down a touch. Well, we'll just open as is because I'm going to play around with the edit a little bit. But what I wanted to say was, if we took those arrows, copy, paste, and then have them closer. Now, obviously, they would be slightly smaller if they were closer. But if essentially we bring them in closer to the car, then they kind of shape and frame the car. So when you come to, now, also at this point, what I would need to do is mask that and then take out, you know, the obvious lines and bits and pieces. Now, you would play around with that a little bit more. But basically, when you're coming to your crop, you then have them included in the photo, something like that. So you've got your crop, we've still got that bit behind, a little bit more room in front than behind, as we talked before. And now I think we start to get a slightly more interesting crop. I'll just bring that down a fraction more because there's a bright line on the top I wasn't quite so keen on. Now we've got that, you've got your black and white. And if I select all that and put it onto a separate layer, then what I can do is I can go to a filter, camera or filter. Now, what I'm feeling slightly inspired by Gord's thing here. You know, we can play around with the contrast a bit more. Now, but then if we take the opposite, little touch of a vignette, not much though, and then whack around the clarity, maybe do something like that. That kind of starts to become a little bit interesting as well. And that's not a million miles away from where you were. We're kind of going for that slightly grittier. It's an old garage. Well, it's a big concrete garage. It's, no other cars about. So we can play around with that kind of grittiness a bit by going for the black and white. Interestingly, could you get a movement? I mean, it's never going to work quite the same way. But if I just duplicate that again for a moment and go for a filter movement blur, this is where, again, you will realize so go for a motion blur like that. Now you can, obviously we don't want an up and down motion blur. We want to tilt it. If I do it exactly sideways, that's not quite right. We want it sort of in the direction of the car. So I'll just shift that, say 7 degrees, so that the motion below is going in the same direction as the car. So it looks like you're starting to pan it a little bit. And if we just sort of nudge it a little bit, like that. Now, we don't want to nudge it too far because it just streaks, but a little bit of motion, something like that, can be a little bit of fun. And then what you could do again is maybe take that and possibly up that clarity a little bit more. In order to do that, again, it'll bring the shadows up a little bit first and the highlights down, because the clarity is going to boost both of those. And you end up with something a little bit like that. Yeah, maybe not. But still a little bit of fun. Now, at this point, this is where you realise the real power of Gord's shot with that. I mean, what you can also do is take that and just reduce the opacity a fraction, get a hint of movement and a hint of the car underneath. So you can play around with that. But in a way, the reason this one, even if I spent a lot of time in Photoshop playing around, the reason this one is never going to get close to Gord's is quite apart from the fact that he's tracking it and all the rest of it. It's partly the shape of the car. I mean, that Corvette that Gord was using earlier has a sleek shapeness. It's got lines. It's got hard lines and angles. Whereas this Jaguar isn't about those hard. It's softer. It's curves with it. And those curves don't translate quite so well to that motion blur. The motion blur gives you straight motion. The motion blur isn't giving you a wavy line. It's giving you a straight line. And the Corvette with its more angular, especially that modern Corvette, it wouldn't maybe work quite so well with that Corvette that Gunilla used, which was a slightly different model and had more curves. But that particular model that Gord shot has those straighter lines in it. And I think what would work better for something like this. But having said that, back in here, really the only way to up this, I think, is back to that notion of you need smoke of some kind. Now, I mean, I joked when you sent in the image and with our little bit of conversation backwards and forwards via email, that ideally you know I was waiting for you to send a shot of Anne doing donuts in one of your cars, you know, with smoke flying, you know, tire smoke, exhaust smoke, and what have you. And at that point, lights, either coloured lights on stands or even just headlights on as well. You need the particles in the air for that, and for that you either need exhaust smoke, or you need tyre smoke, or you need smoke bombs, or you need fog, or you need rain, something to really make the light shine out. And it's that kind of thing which is then going to elevate the photo to something where it feels like, oh, it is more like looking at something in a movie. Anyway, hope that helps a bit. Fun car, and I like the idea of you going into the garage and exploring different ways of doing it. What have we got? April says, I like this composition. John says, nice shot, Robert. I like your setup. Meg says, amazing. Sandy says, love the location. Looks great in black and white. And Robert says, we tried a few motion blur shots, but I think I can do in Photoshop instead. Thanks for your suggestion. Roland says, tyre smoke is the best smoke. It smells the most as well. Very distinct smell of tyre, burnt rubber. Okay, next up then we've got Sandy. And Sandy, we're back to Corvettes again, only this is a Corvette Bel Air. And here we go. Interior. What an incredible interior that is, isn't it? Just, it's all nostalgia and just everything. So Sandra says, I attach a photo taken back in 2017. It was taken with an old camera, so it's not the greatest, but it does have a good backstory. Oh, no, sorry. Reading the wrong one here. Sandy, not Sandra. So, yeah, so I was reading Sandra's one there. So Sandy's one, yes. Here's my submission for the car challenge. The biggest challenge for me is to resist taking pictures of them. I have to admit I'm somewhat of an addict. So whereas the likes of Anton doesn't really take photos of cars, doesn't do much about them. Marci has grown up with an absolute passion from her grandfather. Sandy is a complete addict and can't resist taking photos of cars. She goes, sometimes I have to limit myself to a certain colour or car type, as I can sometimes go overboard. It's just this idea of, right, no, I'm only going to photograph green cars today. That's the only way I can kind of hold myself in. Anyway, she goes, I have lots of images in my archives, but I do prefer to do the challenges as they occur, as it gets me out and about. And I like that. I like that idea that actually, you can... So, yeah... unlike Sandra's one, which was taken back in 2017. Now, this one here, you know, is taken more recently, specifically to time with the challenge. That's always worth something. And she says, this image was taken with my phone, and I started to try and do the cinematic crop on it, as it's a crop I've never tried before. And it will be fun to see the variety of images that the group will submit. And I think that cinematic crop, and it works well with this dash and the chrome and the red, and you know, and it really does. It does. I think that cinematic crop is kind of adding to that sense of nostalgia. You know, we're kind of getting into Greece. We're getting into, you know, these 1950s films. Something rather beautiful about it. So yeah, thanks very much for sending that one in, Sandy. April says beautiful colour. John says beautiful car interior shot with colour and detail. Stacy says gorgeous, love the red, and Marci says it is beautiful, Sandy. Now on to Sandra's car, and then we'll be on to Marci's, and then we will go through and do the challenge, you know, the vote, viewers vote. So now Sandra, yeah, this one says I attach a photo taken back in 2017. It was taken with an old camera, so it's not the greatest, but it does have a good backstory. She says, to help my sister fulfill her lifelong dream of visiting Everest Base Camp, we went on holiday to China and Tibet. After we arrived in Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, I could be pronouncing that wrong, but anyway, we visited a number of monasteries before driving through the Himalayas to Everest Base. We had a guide and a driver, and the photo is the two front seats of the vehicle we travelled in. We had stopped, so I took a photo showing the interior of the minibus with the view through the front window of the Himalayas. And that's fun. I think this is the only interior looking out shot that we've got going on. And it really is evocative. You know, you've got the dashboard, you've got this incredible view, you've got the foothills, or the lower part of the Himalayas here. But we've also got that, you know, we've got the writing, we've got the architecture. You know, this is not Kansas anymore, is it? Carvings, stuff going on, but at the same time we've also got phone being used for GPS. We've got the Toyota minibus here, the beads around the gear stick, what looks like it's probably some local brand of cola or equivalent. It's such a, you know, wet wipes. It is so evocative. You are there. You can practically smell the interior. And you also know that the minute you stepped outside the bus, there's going to be a coolness and a bite in the air. So yeah, real kind of atmosphere. Presence. You get that sense of that's where you are. So yeah, nice one, Sandra. I do like this one. It really, conjures up that whole real feel of a story and a life being lived in that moment. Roland says this picture has a real story, and April says very documentary-like. So yes, thank you very much for sending that one in, Sandra. Now our final one before we then do the go through is this one here from Marci. Now I'm suddenly aware that this picture, I've clipped off the edge of it, so I will just make it slightly smaller so that you can see it hopefully fit in without my head getting in the way. And here we go. So this then is Marci's Torino racer. She says, I was doing street photos one day and ended up walking through a back lane, and there she was. I believe 1970, but a few years either way covers it. It's just a shell. Interior was stripped and prepped for a racing car. Judging by the hole in the hood, it had a huge blower on it, supercharger at one point. The interior shows the remains of a roll cage and a welded in driver's seat. It was bumped around a bit, but no rollover damage. It looks like it's being picked apart for whatever it had left of parts. But she did race once, and I bet she was a beauty. So yeah, cool shot, really, you know, nice angle. You know, you get that sense of the length. Could maybe just drop down a fraction more. The other thing I do feel is it feels very, very tight up against the edge of the frame of the photo, and I'm really just a little bit more room to breathe, I would say, with that. you know, I mean, the roof here is, you know, you've cropped barely a millimetre or two above, likewise at the back, likewise at the front, likewise below. It feels very, very tight. And I think something like this just needs a little bit more room around it. I also think, although you've done it in black and white, I can't help but think, unless that fence behind was some really god-awful colour that just clashed horribly, I'd be really interested to see the colour version, because you always want to see the rust. You want to see the scratched paintwork of something like this, and the tape that's around the window, and all the bits and pieces, and even the bits of plant life growing up. So a colour version of this could be quite interesting as well. Be interesting to see. But like I said, that's without knowing what colour the fence is, because I know sometimes these things in the background can clash so badly that you know, they may be better off without it. So there we go. That then is our set of images. So what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to go back through and we are going to do the viewer's choice. So I will start, so I will go through the photos from start to finish, and what you need to do now is decide, when I'm looking, who your first place is going to be. Don't give me more than one. Don't list, oh, well, I'd like this one, this one, this one. I will just take the first one that you write. The viewer's choices, and however difficult it is, you've got to choose one. If you don't choose one, then you're not getting your vote at all, and the vote gets left to other people. I've seen this happen before. Somebody didn't vote because they couldn't decide which one, and then actually what one was one that they wouldn't have voted for anyway, because other people took the vote away. Something to be said about that, about voting. Anyway, that aside, so what we're going to do then is we're going to start. So I'm going to run through. Don't type it in until I get to the end, but I'm going to just re-talk you through the images. So picture number one is Andy. So if it's the big colours, the American dream, that bold colour, if this is your favourite, then it's Andy. Next up is April. April was going for the Ford Galaxie, the blue Ford Galaxie. So that's April. You don't have to vote on my one. Then we've got the off-kilter angle of John's Ford Model A. So this is John in Ohio, Jon, John. Then we have Stacy's Duesenberg. Is it Duesenberg? Suddenly I've got to go and look again because I can't remember quite how you pronounce it. Yeah, Duesenberg. On the street. So this one's Stacy's. Then we've got Gunilla's Corvette in the parking lot outside the mall. So that's Gunilla. Then we've got Janet's, which I think consensus was Ford Thunderbird between Roland and Marci. So Ford Thunderbird reflected in the hubcap. So that's Janet. Then we have Gord's black and white Corvette with the panning movement. So if this is your favourite, then it's Gord, G-O-R-D, short for Gordon, I guess. Then we're on to Anton's tractor. And yes, we are allowing, we're not saying that this tractor is off topic because it's not a car, but it has been beautifully taken nonetheless. So if this one's your favourite, then it's Anton. Then we're on to Roland. Roland's Defender, black and white with the trees behind, going for the portrait crop. I think the only portrait crop one we have in the mix. So that's Roland. Then we have Viji's Buick, which I think somebody said was a Buick Roadster, was their actual car type, taken in the car museum. So that's Viji, V-I-J-I. Then we've got Robert's Jaguar inside the parking lot. So that's Robert, if it's the black and white Jaguar that you're wanting. Then we've got Sandy's interior. So there's Sandy's Chevy Bel Air, bright red interior. So that's Sandy. Then we've got Sandra. Sandra's from China, Tibet, out in the Himalayas, from the inside of the minibus. So that's Sandra. And then we've got Marci, and Marci's retired Torino racer. So that's Marci. So now start typing in. Now's your chance. Type away. Tell me which one you think deserves the bonus 20 smug points. So while you're going through that, Oh, actually, Sandy says, absolutely amazing photos, everyone. Well done. So yes, you type in which one you think should be win. And while you're doing that, I will just tell you that next week we have is a feedback session. Okay, so the feedback session. So if you're wanting to send me your images for the feedback session, then kimairspodcast@gmail.com. Now remember, feedback on your photos is one of the best ways you can learn to improve your photography. Although this has been a challenge, and strictly speaking, I shouldn't really be doing feedback. You already see me give feedback to 2 or 3 different photos here. There's always a way to try and improve your photography, your photo a bit. So if you've got a photo that you think it's mostly there, something's not quite right, another pair of eyes can really help. Sometimes we've got a photo which we're really pleased with, but it's just not scoring well whenever we put it elsewhere. We don't know why. We've got some kind of blind spot to it and we're not sure what that is. Again, another set of eyes can really help with that. Sometimes it's maybe an editing technique. Sometimes it's conceptual. So there's all sorts of different ways. And there's very, very few places on the internet, if not the world, where you can get genuine free feedback from a professional photographer. What are you waiting for? So there's this opportunity for you. So send your images to kimairspodcast@gmail.com for that. And on top of all that, you get a bonus. If I take your photo and then put it into the podcast and demonstrate so that everybody else is learning from it, you get a bonus 25 Smug Points. And if you accumulate enough Smug Points, you then know you get the chance to choose the topic for the following month. So if you've got a topic that's your burning desire to know more about, then, make sure you stick the photos in for the feedback sessions, because that's one of the best ways to accumulate more Smug Points. All right. Okay. So what am I going to do now? Let's do a little run. So how many people here have actually cast a vote? So we've got one for Andy, then I've got another one for Andy, then we've got Sandy, Anton, Robert, John, Anton, Stacy, Gord, April. So where are we? Let me see. So Andy's got 1, 2. Anton has got 1, 2 as well, 3. Marci's come back in with Anton. Oh yes, sorry. Marci said Anton, not Andy. Right, okay. So yes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 for Anton. Anton is the winner. And so Anton then, with his tractor for the car challenge. Everybody's out to undermine me. Where are we? There we go. So congratulations, Anton. Your photo of the tractor has outdone a black and white sports car, has outdone the American Dream, has outdone a Ford Galaxie. This is the shot that everybody has fallen in love with. So congratulations, Anton. You get a bonus 20 Smug Points for that. Now, what about, April says the tractor challenge. Yeah, who knew it was the tractor challenge? Everybody would have sent in different photos. Right, so what about my choices then? And so let me scroll down because I made my note earlier. So for me then, my first choice was, I had to go for Andy. I mean, it's like, I mean, it was a close call. I will say it was a very, very close call on this one between Andy and Gord. Because, both of these cars, so totally and utterly different. Both of them stunning images in their own right. Both of them taken in very different ways. Gord's taken in that chance or it catching something. Andy's set up and considered. Ultimately, I mean, they're both. I mean, Andy's is flawless. Gord's is almost flawless, just a little bit at the front. Had you got that little bit of extra space on the front, I don't know. I would genuinely have been at a loss to know who to win. I might have even just given a joint first. So anyway, Andy, I'm giving the 30 Smug Points to for my first choice. Gord, second place for 20 Smug Points. And actually, my third place was also Anton. Okay, so Anton gets a bonus 10 smug points from me as well. So congratulations to everybody for that. So I had a couple of commendeds as well. I think Sandra's inside of the minibus looking out was just, yeah, I felt like I was there. Like I said, I could practically smell the thing. There was something very, very evocative about that. And then Sandy's cinematic shot of the inside of the Bel Air as well. There was it really beautifully done, nice, bright, colourful interior shot. So Sandy and Sandra both get 5 bonus smug points each for as a commended, and of course April gets her 10 bonus smug points for evoking my childhood memories with her Ford Galaxie. So thank you so much to everybody for sending in their images. Like I say, next week then is the challenge, the feedback session. And of course, don't forget, if you haven't done it already, do click the like, share, recommend to your friends as well. Even if there's, if you know anybody and you know that there's a particular car that's shown up today that you think, they would love to see that. Or I know somebody who photographs that you would like to be involved in challenges and stuff. Share, let them know. This is a great resource, not just for you, but actually for any of your friends who are into photography as well. So pass the word around and let's build this little community of ours as well. So that's us. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.